Baseball fans, it is time once again for another episode of Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks. With over 50 years in professional baseball and making a multitude of fantastic relationships along the way, Frank Koppenbarger shares great stories with weekly guests from various areas inside of the game. It's all here on the Fans First Sports Network. Let's get ready to play ball. Here's Frank Koppenbarger.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks. And yes, our show is primarily a baseball show, and our guest this week was a baseball guy for a long time, but prior to that, he was an NFL guy and has a lot of experience in the big game, which is going to be Sunday, the Super Bowl. So I thought this was the perfect time to have him on. My longtime friend and counterpart, Ted Walsh. Teddy, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Going to be great to have you.
Yeah.
I talked about it a little bit at the beginning there. 18 years with the San Francisco 49ers as an assistant equipment manager. And during that time, 5 Super Bowl championships. So if you would, talk about how you got that job and just talk a little bit about what you did, and then we'll talk about the Super Bowl.
All right. So I was a sophomore in high school, 16 years old. I had a guy that was in one of my classes, biology class, whose dad worked for the 49ers. His name was Max McCartney. And Max had asked his son to find a couple guys to come help out for training camp. So the guy, Chris McCartney, asked me if I would come help out at training camp, and I did that. That was in 1979 with the Niners, which was Bill Walsh's first year, Joe Montana, Dwight Clark, all those guys' first year. So I went and worked training camp at Santa Clara University, and then they had me come work some of the home games that year. I don't think I worked all of them, but worked some of the home games. And then the next year, Max McCartney and his son Chris went to the University of Illinois with Mike White. So I thought it was just a one summer gig, fun deal. But then the equipment manager called me and asked me if I would come back and work the next summer, and did that and worked all the home games. And then I graduated from high school in 1981, going to go to training camp. I had already applied and got accepted to St. Mary's College out here in California. And at training camp, the equipment manager said, hey, we're looking to add another guy for during the season. Can you help during the regular season? So initially I said, no, I'm going to college. But then I talked to my parents about it and came to the agreement that, hey, I would just work the season and then start school in the January semester. So turns out that the 49ers went to the Super Bowl. I missed the January semester and then end up working, for the 49ers for 18 years.
That's good. So first year, right out of the gate, Super Bowl champs. And talk about that experience. Like, what was it like? This is Super Bowl week. So talk about from your role, what all that meant to you, especially as a high school kid. And furthermore, kind of what was the week like, if you could?
Right. So again, I graduated high school 81. The 49ers, the previous 2 years, I think 79 were 3-13. 80, they were 6-10. So went to work for a team, full time there in 81 that, we weren't quite sure what we were going to get. And it was magical. Niners went 13-3 and went to the Super Bowl. But my daily job, you were equipment guy, working with the head equipment manager who was Chico Norton, who'd been there for, at that time, probably for 35 years. And you're responsible for the locker room and the laundry and all the things that entail that equipment, changing face masks, changing cleats, doing that kind of thing. And then when you went on the road, you're responsible for packing all that gear and getting it on the road and then setting up the locker room wherever you went on the road. And the day-to-day job was like, a 7 in the morning until probably, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the afternoon type job most days. Fridays would be a shorter day, or it would be a travel day.
Right.
Saturdays were a shorter day. Tuesdays were players' day off, so we would have a shorter day. But it was, and that went from this when the regular season started, like in September. At that time, the NFL season was always over in December, and then we went on the playoffs and obviously the Super Bowl that year too.
Right. So now Super Bowl week's a little bit different because instead of being in the city for just a night or maybe 2 nights, you guys were probably there, I'm guessing, for an entire week.
Right.
And where would you practice? Like at a college facility or pro facility? How did that work?
For the Super Bowl you're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. So in '81, we were in the Super Bowl was at the Silverdome in Pontiac, Michigan. And so we flew on that Monday I think we stayed in Dearborn, and we were at a Hilton.
Yeah.
And every day the assistant equipment manager or the Detroit Lions would pick us up, take us to the stadium, and we had the first practice time. So our practice schedule, I think we had the field from 10 to 12 or something, and then the Bengals would practice from 1 to 3 or whatever.
Oh, okay.
So we were using, I don't remember if we were using the Detroit Lions locker room.
So you got the nicer one.
Yeah, we were the NFC team. We had the Detroit Lions locker room.
Right.
So we would go over there every morning. The guy would pick us up like at 7 in the morning, and we'd go over there. But the great thing about it was the Detroit Lions staff, Dan Jawaszewicz, and I can't remember the assistants at the time. Those guys, when our practice was over, we practiced from 10 to 12. They did all our laundry. Like we were done. Like we had the whole rest of the day. Like normally like I said, you're there till 5 o'clock doing everything. They're like, we got it handled. The NFL's paying us. We got you guys covered. So it's kind of a nice treat. But then you got back to the hotel, and there was 4 feet of snow on the ground, ice. And I do remember that they gave everybody, Hertz was a sponsor, they gave everybody a rent-a-car. And the guys' form of entertainment was in the parking lot, had a couple garbage cans set up, and guys were doing races in the cars around the parking lot. And video games had just first come out, and we had one room at the hotel where they had tabletop Pong and Atari games and stuff that guys could go play video games because there wasn't a whole heck of a lot to do there.
Well, Dearborn is sort of outside the city limits, so it's limited out there. We stayed out there when we went in to play the Tigers before. So
right. I remember one night they arranged for the players and the staff to go to a Diana Ross concert. They had buses to go.
Okay.
But other than that, I don't remember a whole lot going on that week,
Did that differ over the years depending on the city you were in?
Yeah, I vividly remember Super Bowls in Miami and all the activities that were going on and parties and going to the beach. And then I remember New Orleans, nobody even cared about going to the parties. They just wanted to go to Bourbon Street,
Yeah.
But there's obviously that Super Bowl 16. What Super Bowl are we at now? We at 60?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I've lost count on the Roman
I know
numeral.
what I'm thinking I was at Super Bowl 16. I'm like, there's so many Super Bowls now that have passed since then. But at that time, that first one, there wasn't a whole lot of activity that I can recall going on around the town.
Yeah, understandably so. And it makes sense that both teams would actually practice right in the Silverdome because you sure couldn't go outside anywhere else in Detroit at that time of the year. So that definitely had to have been a different situation.
Right.
So I did a little reading up, and it sounds to me like the Detroit Super Bowl was pretty memorable. I read that your head coach, Bill Walsh, flew ahead of the team and was dressed as a bellman when the team checked into the hotel. Did you know about that in advance, or did you get a chance? Did you see him in his bellman outfit, or did you have to go right to the stadium?
Yeah, I imagine I must have gone to the stadium because I don't remember seeing. I just saw the pictures of it later. But he had to go back there, I think, they had the coaches come in early for something, a press conference or something. So he flew ahead of the team. Like I said, we flew on Monday. So he came up with the gig, the idea of dressing as a bellman, just to kind of try to lighten the mood a little bit. And it was funny. It fit his character. That's the type of stuff he would do to try and lighten things up. Yeah.
So now there was another incident at the Super Bowl in Detroit involving then Vice President George Bush's motorcade. He was attending the game. And tell me about that.
Right.
But evidently there was some traffic issues. And why don't you tell that story?
Yeah, so, as the equipment guys, we were over there early. I don't even remember what time the games were starting back then, but obviously we got over there early. So the equipment guys were there. I think the first bus had already gotten there. And so there was a fair amount of people that were already there. And I remember somebody saying, like, man, the buses should have been here by now, and remember in those days, there was no cell phone or, what was going on there. So I guess, yeah, like you said, the presidential or vice presidential motorcade pulled everybody over while the vice president could get by. So all the traffic was stopped. And guys were kind of, looking at their watches, like, hey, we're getting kind of close here. Like pregame is at, in an hour and a half from, guys are getting a little edgy. And so Bill Walsh stands up on the bus and he says, hey, guys, I know you guys are a little nervous, but I just got a report that we're up 7-0. Chico, our equipment manager, threw a touchdown pass to Cos, and Cos was the other kid that was working with us, and we're up 7-0. So that was just his way too, just trying to keep everybody loose and everything.
Sounds like he was pretty good at that.
Yeah, he was pretty good. And I remember we never had music in the locker room up to that point. And Eric Wright and Ronnie Lott had a little portable, little boom box at that time. And they had that song by Kenny Loggins, This Is It. I don't know if you remember that song, that song, and Bill Walsh came out and like somebody thought, oh, he's going to say, turn that music off. But he came out and he's like, hey, play that again, and that song, This Is It, Kenny Loggins. And I remember Bill was kind of dancing around like he was a boxer, like he was taking jabs. Because he used to box and he used to work out in our weight room with a big punching bag. So he was acting like he was boxing. I remember Eric Wright saying, oh, man, I'll make you knock yourself out, walking around here like a boxer. Didn't say it to him, but saying. But, yeah, that was before the game. Those are like my memories, like before the game of those things, yeah.
Kind of lightening the mood a little bit, which is really important, obviously.
Yeah.
So now you guys win that Super Bowl and you go back to San Francisco for a big parade. What was that like? So,
yeah, the buses landed. I did not go to the parade. We got on the I guess we got on the equipment truck, whatever, went back and unpacked. And, yeah, like you said, the buses, as soon as we landed at the airport, the buses took guys over to down by the water there.
And they started the parade right then?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Well, in later years, you must have attended one of those parades because we got a nice picture of you hanging off of a cable car.
Yeah, later on. But that first one, I did not go. And I had some pictures. We had the Super Bowl. We unpacked, one of the laundry trunks, and the Super Bowl trophy was in there at our practice facility in Redwood City. And so we pulled the Super Bowl trophy out, and we were snapping pictures. And I remember the two players that somehow got away without getting on the buses to go on the cable cars was Hacksaw Reynolds and Dan Buns. So those two guys were back in the locker room with us while we were unpacking everything, and we were taking pictures with the trophy and everything else. But yeah,
I think you were supposed to have that trophy at the parade.
Yeah, right. Yeah, probably they were probably asking for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, when I was with the Phillies and we won the World Series in 2008, we had a party the night before for the entire organization and the players and their families. And our president and CEO said to me, he says, I need to ask you a big favor. And I said, what's that? And he said, can you bring the trophy to the parade tomorrow? And I said, well, yes, I can bring it, but I'm going to have to take it home with me because I live in New Jersey. The parade's in Philadelphia, and the traffic was going to be so bad. We all the guys that lived in New Jersey, and I'm talking Charlie Manuel, Jimmy Rollins, a lot of players and their families, a lot of staff, we all parked at a mall, and we hired the police department in that community to watch the cars, and the buses took everybody to the parade. So I took the trophy home the night before, and my kids were with me, and it sat on the breakfast table the next morning before we went to the World Series parade. That was our Christmas card that year.
Yeah, that's great.
Never forget that one.
After the 84 Super Bowl, so the 84 Super Bowl was at Stanford, which was just down the street from our training facility, about 15 minutes down the El Camino. So after that Super Bowl, same thing, that, like you said, the trophy's sitting there and everybody's gone. And we had all the chain crew and the ball boys and everything who were working the game meet at our training facility in Redwood City, and we took our equipment manager's truck down to the Stanford for the game. So after the game, we all piled into the truck, and we're going down the El Camino, and cars are honking, Super Bowl, and we actually had the Super Bowl in the back, the trophy in the back of the truck.
You're holding
we're holding up the trophy. People are like, those guys got a trophy, you know? So, and then we took it back, and then our equipment manager, Bronco, had a party at his house, and we walked into the party, you know, with the Super Bowl trophy.
Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So now, Super Bowl championship rings. You were the very fortunate recipient of a lot of those.
Yeah.
Most people don't get one. To get five is pretty incredible. But the 49ers and your owner, Eddie DeBartolo, they were pretty famous for not just handing out the rings. They had some pretty elaborate ceremonies to distribute the rings. Talk about that a little.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. The first one, I don't think there was a ceremony after that first one, after 16, but 84, maybe it's later. So the one year we went to Kauai for ring ceremony. I remember.
They just flew everybody to Hawaii to give them out.
Yeah. You know what? After the 84 season, they did a ring ceremony at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco.
Okay.
So I remember that. It was after mini camp, and it was a black tie thing at the Palace of Fine Arts. And then after either 88 or 89, we went to Kauai. It was 89. And it was a big deal. I mean, you got there and you could sign up for whatever you wanted to do every day. If you wanted to golf, there was golf available. There was you could take helicopter rides. You could go boating excursions, fishing excursions. You just had to sign up for whatever you wanted to do. And there was dinners every night. Pretty incredible experience. It was at the Westin in Kauai, which I think got knocked out by a tsunami later on. But
came back to your room, probably had a little gift sitting on your pillow.
Yeah. You know what I remember too is like I didn't have I wasn't married. You could bring, if at that time, if you had a wife or significant other, you could bring her on the trip. But I didn't have anybody to take on the trip. And Dwight Clark, his wife was pregnant, so she didn't go. And then we had Huey Lewis and the News, the band, they were there to perform. So every night, Dwight and I and Huey and Billy Gibson, who played in their band, we would go over to a pub in Kauai and throw darts, and the rest of the guys had their wives or significant others. They were doing dinners and whatnot. But I just remember going over, every night to this pub and throwing darts. But
Amazing.
no, that was a
Amazing.
great trip.
You've had some incredible experiences with that. There's no doubt. Some of those experiences also, and you've made some really great relationships and friendships that you still have to this day. I know Joe Montana, you stay in touch with him. Talk about some of the other notable guys from those teams that you were with, and just talk about them a little bit.
Yeah. So I actually just saw Joe last night. So they did a thing in San Francisco last night. They called it a Night of Champions. And so a lot of those guys that I stay in touch with, Harris Barton, Joe Montana, Tom Rathman, John Taylor, Eric Wright, Ronnie Lott. Those guys were all there last night. And
the who's who. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just stay in touch. A lot of those guys and all those guys who were there last night all still live in the Bay Area. All from different parts of the country, but all have stayed in the Bay Area. And Joe kind of touched on that a little bit. I think Chris Berman did the narrating last night, and Joe talked about the fact that, hey, we all came here to play. None of us were from here, and now we're all still here. It kind of says something about the city being a special place and having a place in their hearts that they would stay there.
It definitely is. Definitely is. You know what? We still have a lot to talk about. We'll take a little break here, and we'll be back with Ted Walsh and talk about the Super Bowl and about Major League Baseball in just a minute. Okay, we're back here with Ted Walsh, former 49er assistant equipment manager, 5-time Super Bowl champion, and also a longtime Major League Baseball clubhouse and equipment manager. So, Teddy, continuing on with your story, you mentioned Joe Montana. A little bit later on, Steve Young came into the picture. Talk about when he took over, because I read a story that told me that, you could guess who threw the most passes to Jerry Rice. Was it Joe Montana, Steve Young, or Ted Walsh? And I need you to explain this one.
Yeah, so it was transitioning from Joe Montana to Steve Young. Jerry was concerned that the ball spun differently and it came in at a different angle when he was catching it. And he asked me if I could throw footballs to him.
Well, you were left-handed, correct?
Yeah, left-handed. So
Steve Young was left-handed.
Correct. It started in the off season, Jerry coming to the practice facility and me throwing to him because Steve was back in Utah going to law school. Started there, and then it just continued. Then it was every day before practice, and then it would be during defensive period when defense was doing their stuff, and we had our second team offense out there. So I would throw during that period, and then after practice would throw some more. So did that for several years, and it was, hundreds of balls a day. Steve Young, I saw said, that I saved his arm because I was throwing 1,000 balls. I don't think I threw 1,000 balls a day, maybe 100 or two. But yeah, it was a ritual. And, even the one when Joe came back and played,
Right.
we still continued that. It was like a routine. And we did it pregame before the game. I don't remember what the time was, a quarter till or whatever, before pregame warm-up started. We would go out early and start throwing.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So when throwing all those passes now after practice, then you had to go in and hang up laundry and do all your regular work. Did you ever have to ice your arm while you were doing all that?
No, I didn't have any issues, but yeah. Yeah, no, I didn't have any issues with it, but yeah, it was kind of fun, just kind of fun thing to be able to just be a kid and throw the football to, Jerry Rice,
To one of the all-time great receivers, no doubt.
Right.
And apparently he liked the way you threw it too.
Yeah, right. And you know what? I remember going to the Pro Bowl, worked a couple Pro Bowls in Hawaii, and the defensive backs coach would ask me to come over and throw balls. So I would throw balls to all the DBs over there, at the Pro Bowl. And I saw
awesome.
where Chris Carter, the wide receiver from Minnesota, I saw him on an interview. He said that, the 49ers were so ahead of everybody else that when Steve Young came in, they had an equipment guy that they trained to throw the football left-hand. He was right-handed, but they trained him to throw left-hand. I was like, listening to the story, like, wow, amazing how things get twisted.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So while you were doing all this work, you came up with a clever idea to change cleats on the bottom of football shoes and came up with a product that you invented called Quick Cleat. Talk about this tool you used.
Yeah. So up to that point, you would use pliers, or with every pair of cleats that you open the box, there was a little wrench in there to tighten the cleats or loosen the cleats or put the cleats on, however you wanted to do it. And my dad was on one of the trips with us, and guys would go out for pregame and see how the field conditions were and say, like, man, we need to go longer, or we need to go shorter cleats, whatever. So you'd be in there and you'd have a group of guys, the visiting guys, everybody changing cleats and usually using pliers, to change them. And my dad's like, I'm surprised you guys don't have like a drill bit with like a lug gun, like a lug nut gun like they use for the Indianapolis 500 to change the tires or something. And so kind of took that idea, and our trainer, his dad had a machine shop. And so we just took a socket wrench, and we took the little tool that they gave you in the box of shoes and cut that off and soldered it on. And that was the first prototype one. And then he was able to mass produce it. And, I sold it to every college in America that had a football program. I sent a flyer to, and, every, football league that was out there, the Canadian League, and there were some other semi-pro leagues I would send the flyer out. And then all the, the sales or the packing and sending and everything I did myself, send them out to the schools.
Well,
and the pro teams too. Yeah.
My longtime friend, a guy by the name of Andy Dixon, was the head equipment manager for every sport at Illinois. And he wanted me to be sure and thank you for coming up with that idea.
They still use it, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, he's retired, but he had them, and he said it made a world of difference.
Yeah.
So I was talking to him the other day, and he said, please thank him for me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Good.
Yeah.
So now when the Super Bowl's over, it's kind of baseball time then. And you ended up being a baseball guy, and we'll get into all that. But how did you start off working in baseball?
So that 1981 season, we were playing the Packers, and we were playing them at County Stadium in Milwaukee. And at that time, the Packers used to play some games, home games at County Stadium and some at Lambeau Field. So the Brewers had just got eliminated. I think they got eliminated by the Yankees in the playoffs, whatever. So their traveling secretary, vice president traveling secretary was Tommy Ferguson. And he knew our equipment manager, Chico Norton, and they were talking while we were setting up the locker room for a practice that day on a Saturday. And he said, like, hey, do you have an equipment guy that you can spare in the off season that, we could use? He goes, we already use a guy from the New England Patriots, Donnie Brosher, who was the assistant equipment manager. And at that time, most of the organizations were set up where you had a full-time equipment manager who was there year-round, and then you had seasonal assistants that would just come in during the season. So I was a seasonal assistant. Donnie Brosher from the Patriots was a seasonal assistant. So he asked me if I wanted to do it, and I was like, heck yeah. So again, I put off school after the Super Bowl, like a week after the Super Bowl, flew down to Arizona and started working spring training in the clubhouse with the Brewers with their clubhouse manager, Bobby Sullivan.
Yeah.
So Sully was the clubhouse manager, and then I helped him out, and Donnie helped him out in the clubhouse there. We were in Sun City, Arizona.
Right.
So I did that for 5 years, 82 through 86. And then before
By
that,
then, Tony Miliaccio had taken over after Sully
yes,
passed away,
after
unfortunately.
so I first met Tony Miliaccio when I was down there for spring training. Tony was actually going to school down there at Grand Canyon. He would come over on his time, whatever. But he was working. Same thing. He was working during the regular season, going to school down there, and trying to juggle them both. But that's where I first met Tony, and like I said, I did that for spring training for 5 years with the Brewers before the Niners made me a full-time, year-round employee in 1986.
So now it comes to the year 1997, and you get another opportunity. You get asked to interview for the job with the Cleveland Indians as the head equipment manager. And you decided to go for that interview and talk about it a little.
Yeah, I'd actually interviewed for that job when they first moved from the old Cleveland Stadium to Jacobs Field. I went back and interviewed, and I didn't get the job at the time, and that was in '94. And then they asked me in '96 to come interview for the job, and I went back there and interviewed. And I remember before I left to come back, I saw Mike Hargrove, who was the manager at that time, in the hallway, and he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, I don't want you to get on a flight back to San Francisco wondering if you got the job or not." He goes, "The job is yours if you want it." He said, "We should have hired you last time, but we messed up. But the job is yours if you want it." And I told him I appreciate it, and I would get back to them as soon as I got back home and talked to people. So I finished up the '96 season. I went back to Cleveland a couple of times to interview staff and everything else. And then my last game with the Niners was a playoff game in Green Bay in January of '97. And I remember I got on the bus with all the players, and players got off to get on their plane, and the bus driver was going to take me over to the terminal where I was. And everybody got off the bus, and I was the only one there along with Coach George Seifert. And George said to me, he said, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I want to do it." I go, "George, it'd be like you." I said, "You'd be assistant coach your whole life. I could be an assistant guy, but, kind of want to do the head job and do things the way you want to do them." And he said, "Have you ever lived in the Midwest?" And I said, "No. I know. I never have. I've only been in California." He said, "Well, I coached at Cornell. It's not easy living in those type of conditions when you're used to California."
Right. Cleveland especially.
Yeah. So I said, "I get it. I get it. But, I said, I think the off season I can come back to California, whatever." I said, spring training is going to be in Arizona, or
Right.
Florida. I think they were in Florida at that time. So, George said, "Good luck." And then I think 2 days later, George got ousted, and they brought in Steve Mariucci. I went from there, from Green Bay to Cleveland, and started getting things ready, packed up to go to spring training in Winter Haven, Florida.
Wow.
Yeah.
So '97 was a pretty good year to start. You had the All-Star game that year.
Right.
All right, mid-season. So that's plenty of work for a seasoned veteran, let alone a guy just starting out in baseball.
Right.
And then your team went to the World Series. So you were a rabbit's foot for the Cleveland Indians without a doubt.
Right. I mean, I must have brought some luck that first year. Yeah.
Well, you had some real good players over there. Talk about a few of those, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, that lineup was stacked. Remember, just about, an all-star at one point, like '99, like an all-star at every position, with Sandy Alomar, and then Jim Thome, and Roberto Alomar, and Omar Vizquel, and Travis Fryman, and David Justice, and Kenny Lofton, and Manny Ramirez. I mean, there was a really good offensive team. Anything that we lacked, and John Hart, our general manager, used to say, it's going to be on my tombstone. if only I had a number one starter, But yeah, that was fun. I mean, first year, like you said, going to the World Series and going to Game 7, had an exciting Game 7 that unfortunately we came up on the short side of. Great experience. And at that time, Cleveland, the Indians were like the only show in town. The Browns had left. The Cavaliers were awful at that time. And so I think the Indians set a record with like 455 consecutive sellouts.
Yeah.
Like it was a hot ticket.
You met a guy then that was the hitting coach, and he later replaced Hargrove as the manager, a guy by the name of Charlie Manuel. Yeah. And he made a real impression on you. So I would like you to do your famous impersonation of Charlie, because I think you do Charlie as good as Charlie does.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, like when I was in Japan, like we had like a couple clubhouse guys, and like we'd go out at night, like we'd have a good time. Like, yeah, that's what we used to do. Yeah. Yeah.
I appreciate that. I know we could have done the whole show that way, but it's an inside joke. Yeah. I will say this. We were in Seattle once, and I'm getting a little ahead of myself because Ted ended up with Seattle, but we were in Seattle once, and it happened to be Father's Day weekend. So I went down the street and bought a Father's Day card, and it was one of the funniest things we ever did. It had like some push buttons on there where you could record your voice. So I went over to Teddy's office over in the Mariner clubhouse, and we recorded this thing. He recorded it. I just bought it.
Yeah.
And then we presented it to Charlie. Yeah. And I swear, it was right before the game, too, in Charlie's office.
He had tears going out.
He was crying. He was laughing so hard. I mean, you had like your favorite TV show was Hee Haw, and right. What's your name? And you did the whole thing so well.
Right.
That was one of my all-time favorite memories. Yeah, but a few years with the Indians, and you started missing the West Coast, and an opportunity came to take the job in Seattle. So you moved to Seattle to be the clubhouse and equipment manager for the Mariners. Talk about that.
Yeah. So yeah, there was no secret that I wanted to get closer to the West Coast. And at that time, my dad, his health was failing, so I wanted to be closer to home. So much easier back and forth between Seattle, obviously, and San Francisco than it was Cleveland to San Francisco. So thought it was a good opportunity and went there and met a lot of great people. Raised my kids, my daughter was born there. My son was actually born in San Francisco, and bought a house there and really, really liked the area until winter came, and then it rained every day.
Right.
But, the beauty of baseball is like that off season, you could kind of chase the sun a little bit, and come back to California or go someplace where it wasn't rainy. But that city, as is a spectacular city, beautiful city during the baseball season. You don't get as much rain, and the sunset in the summer, like you got sunlight almost till 10 o'clock at night because you're so far north, and just the lakes and the water and the greenery. It's a beautiful place.
Well, you had some great players up there. Now, Griffey, you were on the visiting side when he was with the Mariners. He had already left the Mariners when you joined up, right?
No, so he came back.
I know he came back, yeah.
I think he came back maybe 2010, and I was on the home side.
Oh, so you're still over there, okay.
Yeah, I had Junior for a year and a half. He left maybe like halfway through or the last year, his last year. But yeah, I had him for a couple of years, and he was great, and we golfed together on the road, and he was a big kid. I think his whole life he was a big kid. Just
still acts like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you also had Ichiro there,
right?
And Adrian Beltre, another Hall of Famer and a good friend of yours.
Right.
You had some great players and some more great experiences, but your whole life has been an experience I don't think you could ever got at St. Mary's College.
Right, exactly. I got a buddy who says I'm like Forrest Gump, like you just end up like in all the right places. There you are in the background, while big things are happening. So yeah, I've been very blessed. You're right. Yeah.
We all have been. You have had some kind of experiences, and really appreciate you sharing the football and the Super Bowl stuff with us today. That's a special treat on a baseball show.
Right.
But Teddy, thanks a million for joining us.
All right.
Fans, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fans First Sports Network. And we'll be back next week with another guest.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Planes, Trains, Buses, and Ballparks with Frank Kopenbarger. Tune in next week for another great episode on the Fans First Sports Network.